Thank you for joining us for Couch and Court Issues. My name is Carla, and I'm a therapist, and I'm here with Mark, my husband and family law attorney. We're both excited about being here and glad you've joined us for Couch and Court Issues, where we talk about real-life problems that impact the family. Please do not turn the dial. You will really regret it today, because today we're going to talk about young adults and teen issues with our special guest, Stanley Winters Jr. Stanley is 20 years old and attends Azusa Pacific University, and he has just wrote his first book. It's going to be one of many. I already know that from reading this book, and it's called Dating, Cheating, and Loving God. Stanley, will you tell us a little about yourself?
Hi, how you guys both doing? First and foremost, I just want to thank you guys for allowing me to be on the show. You just described me pretty well yourself. If I could add anything, I just would want to say being a follower of Christ is probably the biggest thing that defines me. So that's the reason I'm on the show with you guys now. It's the reason I wrote the book. Seeing the fact that I have class in an hour, that means I'm also a student. So as you said, I do attend Azusa Pacific University out in Southern California, where I'm studying theology currently. I'm a junior. I'm from Sacramento, California, where I live with my family, 5 younger brothers and my older sister and my parents. So, yeah.
That's great. That's great. He has a wonderful family, and that's really great. And you are welcome. We're just so happy that we read your book and that you're here and you're here to talk. So, Mark, could you ask him his first question?
Yeah, Stanley, what was the motivation behind writing Dating, Cheating, and Loving God?
The book started off as a sermon. So originally was preaching a sermon at my home congregation, Parkway Church of Christ, and I was really just trying to preach a sermon where I really talked about what a relationship with God looked like. And the point of reference was myself, looking at my own past relationship with Christ. And I realized that throughout my past relationship with Christ, I've always known about Christ, been familiar with Christ, been going to church. So what ended up happening was I realized that there was a stage that I was in that I referred to as dating. And many people know a dating relationship is very similar in many ways to a marriage relationship, but neither one of the people have made the lifelong commitment to be with one another. And that's the same way I was with God and Jesus. I was very familiar with them, knew a lot about them, spent a lot of time with them, but I was not committed to being with them for the rest of my life. Then I also put together cheating, where many people are in a relationship with God, but for some reason go back to their old way of living. And so that's where I got dating, cheating, and then loving was that place that we want to be in, where we're just longing and desiring God, more and more of God, desiring to be in constant communion with God. So together I put dating, cheating, and loving God as a sermon. The response from the sermon was really real, and eventually I went to a John Maxwell conference. And from that conference, I was really inspired to write books. And that night I began writing Dating, Cheating, and Loving God, the book. And I've been moving forward since last July, and now you guys have the book actually complete.
Wow. I was wondering because, I read a lot of books. And what I loved about this book, I haven't seen it before. I haven't said I read every book. But what I love about this book is you talked about dating, cheating, and loving God, like you mentioned, and you compared that to a relationship with different people the whole time through. And I think that's what's so unique about this book. I mean, you did it in such a simplistic, simple way. I was like, okay, I want people to know he's a young person, and I know he's interested in young people, but I am no way young, and I love this book, and I think it should be a book for all people and not just young people. So I just want to share that. That's awesome.
Stanley, let me ask you this. When you talk about the dating relationship, why are people so stuck in a dating stage with God?
Because a relationship with God is not that easy. So if you look at a lot of maybe other religions, or you look at maybe if you look at Islam or Buddhism or whatnot, a lot of people will go to Buddhism because it's self-realization. It helps them with a lot of things. And if you look at Christianity, what happens is, yes, there's something in it for us, but we have to give up a lot. And that's what a lot of people aren't willing to do, is the fact that we have to, take up our cross, which means maybe being persecuted, maybe being different, maybe being the awkward one of the group or whatnot, or giving up the way of life that we love to live all the time, or the sin in our life. So that's why people stay in the dating relationship where they're like, you know what, I'm not fully into this yet because I'm not ready to give up everything yet. So that's why I believe so many people are in a dating relationship with God.
Right. You just said that so well, and you wrote it so well. And I think that's it. We want what we want. but we don't want to give. And in Christianity, God requires something of us. And it was so beautiful how you showed it in real life terms with real life experiences so people could relate it back and forth. That was so well done.
Yes, definitely.
Hey, Stanley, you also talked about submitting. And what's the problem that we have, the struggle that we have with submitting to God?
I don't think anybody likes to submit, whether it be most of the time women submitting to men, whether it be a child submitting to their mom or dad. I don't believe submitting is something regardless of your age, regardless of culture. I don't think anybody likes to submit. I think that's because each one of us is born with a certain sense of pride where we're all trying to be number one. We're all trying to make our way to the top. And so anybody above us telling us what to do is above us, that we don't like being told anything. And a lot of it has to do with our pride that can be seen in a 5-year-old and can be seen in a 30-year-old when their boss is telling them what to do. But that pride of, who are you to tell me what to do? So that's why a lot of people have a struggle submitting to God. And then also when it comes to our relationship with God, submitting to God is just so scary in a way. It's really scary because you don't know what he might have you do. If you actually submit your life to him, you don't know where he might lead you. You don't know where he might take you in life. And a lot of people like to have control over their life. It can be a very scary thing to submit.
You're right. You know, we live in such a self-gratification society, and such a society that is up to me. I earned it. I do things my way. And a lot of times, especially being a female and a woman, and I've been to women's studies and different things like this, we talk about how women, we have problems submitting to our husband. And then we realize that, you know, Christ asks our husbands submit to the church, which is even a greater call. And I think we just use submit as like it's a bad word. But I've never really thought of submit as when it comes to kids and stuff. I never really realized what I was requiring my kids to do. I never just saw it in such a simple way like you shared. And so you're right. We all have pride, ego, selfishness. That's why we need Christ. And that's why he came, because we couldn't save ourselves because of who we are. Submitting is just part of that, getting rid of some of that old self. So thank you for that.
Yes, definitely.
Stanley, when you read the book or you look at the title of the book, Dating, Cheating, and Loving God, you think initially it's for teens and young adults, but it appears to me that you wrote this book basically for a general audience.
Yes, that's true. The book is actually written for anyone of any age. I would refer it to anybody probably over the age of 12 years old, 10 years old, all the way up till 80 or 100, because the principles and concepts of that book just are simply dealing with a relationship with God, which is what all Christians need to have. So it's not necessarily for a specific age group. However, what you're going to get in the book is that many of the stories, because I was 19 when I wrote it, many of the stories and many of the analogies that I use in there are going to be more relatable to people who are teenagers and probably in their 20s, maybe early 30s. They might be able to relate to a lot more of the issues that I'm talking about from my perspective. But yeah, the book is actually for all ages, regardless of your age group. That book is a book that should help you with your walk with Christ.
Right. The only thing I disagree with you in is I've been there. I had those stories. It's been a long time. But when you shared that story about that tall young lady that was awkward, it was like, that was my girlfriend. Now, it may have been a different year, but that was my girlfriend. And different stories, I was like, that was this, that was that. I'm going to just do a little confession. When I heard about your book, I work with your dad, great guy, and I met you, and I said, sure, give me the book. I'll read the book. You know, any young man do anything. I didn't really read the book. I gave it to my husband, and he said, Carla, this book is awesome. Well, I knew it would be a good book. You're a good guy. You're a smart guy. You know, you were homeschooled. Your mom did a wonderful job. Had no idea it was this good. And then he kept saying, Carla, you have to check it out. Still didn't check it out. Mark said, let's have him on the show, and he started telling me things about it. But then I thought, I must read this book. And then, so I just want to say, because sometimes people who we know and people in our own home, we kind of minimize, you know, Jesus was not respecting his own home. I just want you to know, you guys, I want you to get this book, Dating, Cheating, and Loving God, for yourself if you don't have any kids. You read it first, and then you pass it on or buy one for the other person. And I have no connection with promoting this book, but I know this book is God-centered, Christ-centered, and Christ-inspired. And if someone wants to get this book, and I know we're going to talk about it again, what is the best way to get a hold of this book?
The best way to get a hold of this book is to go to Amazon.com and type in Dating, Cheating, and Loving God, or you can go to CreateSpace.com. And a way that might be even easier is look for me on my Facebook page, Stanley Winters, and on that page, like the page, and on there you have both the links to CreateSpace.com and Amazon.com will take you directly to where you can buy the book.
Okay, you said that real fast. So we're going to slow down, and you're going to say each of those again. I want you to start with Facebook because that's what people can relate to. Not me, but other people. So start with the Facebook one and then say them all again.
All right, so on Facebook, you can go to the page Stanley Renters and like that page. And from there, you will be able to get on Amazon.com or CreateSpace.com. And on that page, there's links to each one of those sites where you can directly buy the book. Other than that, you can go to Amazon.com or CreateSpace.com individually and type in Dating, Cheating, and Loving God or Stanley Winters, and the book will come up.
Great. And what if I want to, I want you to come and talk to my church, or I want you to come and give a sermon or are you available? How does that work?
Yeah, I'm definitely available, and I love to do things of that nature. The best way, if you want to reach me for any speaking engagements, would be to email me at inhispresence, the number 12, and at yahoo.com, inhispresence12 at yahoo.com.
Stanley, let me ask you this. What were some of the challenges you faced while writing this book?
Satan definitely didn't want this book coming out, and I noticed that whenever I preach a sermon the week before, he tries to distract me, throws whatever temptation can come my way. So he definitely didn't want, when I wrote this book, I started in last July, took about 7 months to write it. He definitely threw everything he could at me, whether it was busyness, whether it was temptation, distraction, discouragement. He really didn't want me to get this out. When I finished writing the book in November, I immediately hit about two and a half months of just deep depression. The book was finished in November, and it could have been released in probably December, but the book didn't get released till March 1st simply because of the fact that I was in depression. During that depression, I was thinking about just deleting the book. I was thinking about just throwing the book away.
Wow.
There was so many different factors involved during that couple of months. The book was the last thing on my mind to move forward with, and I was just thinking, I'm never going to release this. So that was Satan's, I would say, his last blow at me, in addition to all the other distractions and busyness he put me through when I was going through school. It's just I didn't have time to work on the book. So it was just so many different obstacles, but at the end of the day, it helped actually the process of writing the book, all the things that I went through during writing the book. There were some major distractions, but through it all, God got me through all of them, and now the book is ready to go.
Thanks for sharing that testimony. That's sort of like when we talk about mental health. There's always a journey. Any story of the Bible, any man of God or woman of God in the Bible, he blessed them, he gave them something, but there was always a journey or tribulation he had to go through. And you shared yours. What helped you come out on the other side? What changed that? How did you move forward?
Oh, it was really relying on God. I really believe that, specifically speaking of the depression, time after the book was actually written, that couple months I really think was God just challenging me and growing me. So it wasn't like I did anything dramatic change or I went out of my way to help myself. It was really God, just being patient and waiting on God. I was reading Psalms 40, and Psalms 40 just talks about David is speaking about, I waited patiently on God, and he answered me. So a lot of times in situations like that, we like to turn and take care of the situation. And so that in that situation, when I was just depressed, I would have loved to just take care of it myself. But I was in a situation where really I couldn't get my mind out of the prison that it was in or whatnot. And I really just had to continue to pray, continue to be in my word, continue to wait on God because there was no other option for me. So eventually, after waiting on God, when he brought me out of the depression, it really was just his hand doing that. It was nothing that I had done at all.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. And that's another testimony people realize is that we all need to wait on God. Sometimes we want a quick fix and a quick solution, and God is the answer. And I'm so glad you listened patiently and you waited on God. If you have just joined us, we've been talking about teen issues and young adult issues and life issues and everyone's issues and what we can do as a community, show support and encouragement. My name is Carla Ambrose, and I'm a therapist, and I'm here with my husband, Mark, who is a family law attorney. Couch and Court Issues arose from our desire to talk about topics that impact families from a therapist and a legal perspective. And you're also here with our special guest, writer, author, minister. I'm going to go in and say it. I'm going to speak it. Stanley Winters Jr., who's 20 years old, and he's right now at Azusa Pacific College. In a few more minutes, he's going to go to class. So we have about 6 more minutes to share with him.
Stanley, what are some of the biggest problems you feel young people face today?
Oh, there's so many. If I could sum it all up, I would probably say the biggest problem is the fact that there's really no hope among young people. Not necessarily no hope in the young people, but the young people, when they look at the world, when they look at life, the future, there's really no hope. We go through a lot of pain, we go through a lot of hurt. It's a lot of confusion. We have parents telling us say no to sex, and then the media's telling us say yes to sex, and then the teachers are telling us be yourself, whatever you want to do. So it's all these different ideals, it's all these different philosophies that we're learning. It's so many different influences coming in on our life, and if there's really no truth and there's really no foundation in Jesus Christ, then who's to say that one truth is better than the other truth? So really, I believe that leads to so much confusion and so much lack of hope amongst young people. And really, we have no leaders, I would say, leaders who are offering hope. The leaders we have in our generation are people more so, actors and actresses, or, Lil Wayne and Drake, people of that nature. And those leaders of our generation aren't offering us any hope. So I really believe that one of the biggest issues is the lack of hope. And because of that causes so many other problems, such as turning to things such as alcohol, turning to finding the security in relationships, or drugs. That causes us to be rebellious. So it causes so many of the issues that parents deal with from the youth, and that the authorities and older people deal with from the youth, come from the youth being confused and the youth having a lack of hope.
With that being said, I think one of the saddest things about our times is that sounds like you're sharing it's a struggle for the youth. I'm a therapist, and I used to work with youth, but now I work with people 18 and up. And that's the biggest problem I see is lack of hope. The biggest problem I see is not believing that our best days are yet to come. And within here, while we're on this world, not believing that our best days are ahead of us, and it's the loss of hope. And believing in self-gratification, and if we want our pain removed, it should happen instantly and right away, not waiting or seeking like you shared. So if you just joined us, we're talking to Danny Winters Jr., and he's a young man, and he wrote an awesome book on dating, cheating, and loving God, and it's bigger than the title. And with that being said, Mark.
Hey, Stanley, you talked about the flirt in the relationship as far as young people flirting. Talk about that. How did that come up?
Oh, yeah, definitely flirting with temptations. Well, the example I use in the book is any man who is in a relationship. I just specifically specify men, and they're in a relationship, but they're still flirting with another girl, even though they're in a relationship with their girlfriend or their wife. What I talked about with that is I just related to us with God is we're in a relationship with God. And, there's certain unwritten rules in a relationship, but what we do a lot of times is we flirt with certain sins. So we might know we struggle with getting drunk, but we're still always at the parties where there's alcohol all around, or we struggle with sexual immorality, but we're always by ourselves with someone of the opposite sex or the same sex. We're always doing these things, putting ourselves in situations, basically, that's around the sin that we deal with. And that's what I talk about with flirting with other things other than God.
Wow, it is so much I would love to talk about, but we have 1 minute left. What would you like to share in 1 minute?
If I could share anything in 1 minute, it's just to share the message that there is hope. Regardless of, whether, like I said for myself, it was depression, whether it grew up in a life of a messed up family, a life of abuse, a life of a lot of pain and hurt, confusion, there is hope. And that's honestly what, my goal is with this book, is to just portray that there is hope for the future. There's hope in Jesus Christ.
Hope in Jesus Christ. A great way to end. We're talking to Stanley Winters Jr., and we're glad to be here. Look forward to hearing from you next week.
We hope you enjoyed this week's edition of Couch and Court Issues, A Christian Perspective. The information provided by Carla and Mark is not intended to establish a therapist-client or attorney-client relationship. If you have any questions regarding you or your family's legal interests, please call attorney Mark Ambrose at 916-492-9170. This program is sponsored by the law offices of Mark Ambrose.